Welcome to Forward Tech with Akhan, where we talk about technology that is shaping our future today. In this episode, I've put together a supercut of everything Elon Musk said at Neuralink's 2022 Show and Tell Day. There are a lot of crazy updates in this video, so make sure to watch until the end. Also, please be sure to like and subscribe to stay up to date with our latest videos. Be on the lookout for my reaction and review of this Neuralink 2022 Show and Tell Day, because there's a lot to unpack. Without further ado, let's check out everything Elon had to say at the 2022 Neuralink Show and Tell Day.
All right, welcome to the Neuralink Show and Tell. So we've got an amazing amount of new developments to share with you that I think are incredibly exciting, as well as tell you about the future of what we're planning to do here. It's now this is meant to be a technical podcast, sort of like a. I'm going to provide an overall summary, and then we're going to have a number of members of the Neuralink team come in and give a deep technical overview of the various areas. So yeah, so let me move forward with the overall summary. Now, some of the things I'm going to say are things if you've been following Neuralink, you've already heard before, but for a lot of people out there, they've no idea what Neuralink does, and so I'll be a little bit repetitive of things you may already know, but that others do not. So, the overarching goal of Neuralink is to create ultimately a whole brain interface. So a generalized input-output device that, in the long term, literally could interface with every aspect of your brain, and in the short term, can interface with any given section of your brain and solve a tremendous number of things that cause debilitating issues for people. So. So our long-term is, I'll talk a little bit about our long-term goal. It's going to sound a little esoteric, but it was actually the sort of my prime motivation, which was, what do we do about AI? Like, what do we do about artificial general intelligence? If we have digital superintelligence that's just much smarter than any human, how do we mitigate that risk? At a species level, how do we mitigate that risk? And then even in a benign scenario where the AI is very, very benevolent, then how do we even go along for the ride? How do we participate? And the conclusion, the thing that the biggest limitation in going along for the ride and in aligning AI, I think, is the bandwidth, the how quickly you can interact with the computer. So we are all already cyborgs in a way, in that your phone and your computer are extensions of yourself. And I'm sure you found, like, if you leave your phone behind, you end up tapping your pockets, and it's like having missing limb syndrome. Like, where the phone is, leaving your phone behind is kind of like a missing limb at this point. You're so used to interfacing with it. You're so used to being a de facto cyborg. So what's the limitation on a phone or a laptop? The limitation is the rate at which you can receive and send information, especially the speed with which you can send information. So if you're interacting with a phone, it's limited by the speed at which you can move your thumbs, or the speed at which you can talk into your phone. This is an extremely low data rate. Maybe it's like 10, optimistically 100 bits per second, but a computer can communicate at gigabits, terabits per second. So this is the fundamental limitation that I think we need to address to mitigate the long-term risk of artificial intelligence, and also just go along for the ride. And yeah. So, but like I said, that's an esoteric explanation that I think will appeal to a niche audience, some of whom may be here. And that's a very difficult problem. So even if we do not succeed with that problem, I think we are confident at this point that we will succeed at many. It's solving many brain injury issues, spine injury issues along the way. So, yeah. So, anyways, so actually we have Justin Roiland in the audience. Hi, Justin. So it's a little Rick and Morty reference here. This great Rick and Morty episode about intelligence enhancement of your dog, and what's the worst that could happen? So, anyway, Rick and Morty, I recommend it. So you want to be able to read the signals from the brain. You want to be able to write the signals. You want to be able to ultimately do that for the entire brain, and then also extend that to communicating to the rest of your nervous system if you have a sort of a severed spinal cord or neck. So now this video is now 18 months old. So this is Pager, who is playing monkey mind pong. So this is Pager has a Neuralink implant in this video, and the thing that's interesting is that you can't even see the neural implant. So we've miniaturized the neural implant to the point where it matches the thickness of the skull that is removed. So it's essentially it's sort of like having an Apple Watch or a Fitbit, replacing a piece of skull with like a smartwatch, for lack of a better analogy. So you can see, you really can't. He looks he's normal, and I think that's pretty important. If you have a Neuralink device, like I could have a Neuralink device implanted right now, and you wouldn't. You wouldn't even know. I mean, hypothetically, maybe one of these demos. In fact, one of these demos I will. Yeah. So yeah. Anyway, so here's I mean, first of all, it's kind of wild. Hey, monkeys can play Pong. Like they can actually play Pong if you give them a joystick. So Pedro first learned to play Pong with a joystick. So I'm like, that was novel. It's like I didn't know monkeys could play Pong, but they can. And then so we first trained Pedro to play Pong with a joystick. Then we took the joystick away and have the Neuralink. And now he's playing It's a telepathic video games essentially. So what we've been doing since then is we've been on the very difficult journey from prototype to product. And I've often said that prototypes are easy, production is hard. It's really, I'd say, 100 to 1,000 times harder to go from a prototype to a device that is safe, reliable, works under a wide range of circumstances, is affordable, and done at scale. It's insanely difficult. I mean, there's an old saying that that it's 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration, but I think it might be 99.9% perspiration. The best example I could give of an idea being easy, but the execution being hard, is going to the moon. It's the idea of going to the moon, easy. going to the moon, very hard. So, we've been working hard to be ready for our first human, and obviously we want to be extremely careful and certain that it will work well before putting a device in a human. But we've submitted, I think, most of our paperwork to the FDA, and we think probably in about 6 months we should be able to have our first Neuralink in a human. So. But as I said, we do everything we possibly can to test the devices before, not even going into a human, before even going into an animal. So we do benchtop testing, we do accelerated life testing. We have a fake brain simulator that has the texture, and it's like emulating a brain, but it's sort of rubber. And so before we would even think of putting a device in an animal, we do everything we possibly can with rigorous benchtop testing. So we're not cavalier in putting devices into animals. We're extremely careful, and we always want the device, whenever we do the implant, if it's in a sheep or a pig or monkey, to be confirmatory, not exploratory, so that we've done everything we possibly can with benchtop testing, and only then would we consider putting a device in an animal. Yeah, we'll actually show you a demo later today in a few hours, really, of implanting in a brain proxy. And if anyone in the audience wants to volunteer, we have the robot right there. So let's see, and since the page of demo, we've expanded to work with a troop of 6 monkeys. We've actually upgraded Pager. They do varied tasks, and we do everything possible to ensure that things are stable and replicable, and that that the device lasts for a long time without degradation. So, and what you're seeing there is, it looks like the Matrix, but that's actually that's a real output of neural signals. So that's not a simulation or just a screensaver or something. Those are actual neurons firing. That is what one of the readouts looks like. And here you can see Sake, it's one of our other monkeys, typing on a keyboard. Now, this is telepathic typing. So to be clear, he's not actually using a keyboard. He's moving the cursor with his mind to the highlighted key. Now technically, can't actually spell, and so I don't want to oversell this thing. Because that's the next version. But what's really cool here is Sake the monkey is moving the mouse cursor using just his mind, moving the cursor around to the highlighted key, and then spelling out what we want to spell. But and then so this is something that could be used for somebody who's say quadriplegic or tetraplegic human, even before we make the spinal cord stuff work, is being able to control a mouse cursor, control a phone, and we're confident that someone who has basically no other interface to the outside world would be able to control their phone better than someone who has working hands. So, yeah. And I mentioned upgradability. Upgradability is very important because our first production device will be much like an iPhone 1, and I'm pretty sure you would not want an iPhone 1 stuck in your head if the iPhone 14 is available. So it's going to be being able to demonstrate full reversibility and upgradability, so you can remove a device and replace it with the latest version, or if it stopped working for any reason, replace it. That's a fundamental requirement for the device at Neuralink. And I should say both Sake and Pager were upgraded to our latest and greatest implants. That's been really over a year and a half now that Pager's had for the first implant and then the upgraded implant. So this is a very good sign that it lasts for a long time with no observed ill effects. I think it's also important to show that Sake actually likes doing the demo, and is not like strapped to the chair or anything. So the monkeys actually enjoy doing the demos because they get the banana smoothie, and it's kind of a fun game. So I guess what I'm trying to make is like we care a great deal about animal welfare, and I'm pretty sure like our monkeys are pretty happy, you know. So as you can see, a quick decision maker on the fruit front. So for the first two applications we're going to aim for in humans are restoring vision, and I think this is like notable in that even if someone has never had vision ever, like they were born blind, we believe we can still restore vision. Because the visual part of the cortex is still there. Even if they've never seen before, we're confident that they could see. And then the other application being in the motor cortex, where we would initially enable someone who has no ability, almost no ability to operate their muscles, you know, sort of like a sort of Stephen Hawking type situation, and enable them to operate their phone faster than someone who has working hands. But then obviously even better than that would be to bridge the connection. Take the signals from the motor cortex, and let's say somebody's got a broken neck, then bridging those signals to Neuralink devices located in the spinal cord. So we're confident there are no physical limitations to enabling full body functionality. I mean, as miraculous as it may sound, we're confident that it is possible to restore full body functionality to someone who has a severed spinal cord. So, yeah. All right. And then I want to emphasize again that the primary purpose of this update is recruiting. A lot of times people think that they couldn't really work at Neuralink because they don't know anything about biology or how brains work. And the thing that we really want to emphasize here is that you don't need to, because when you break down the skills that are needed to make Neuralink work, it's actually many of the same skills that are required to make a smartwatch or modern phone work. So it's sort of, software, batteries, radios, inductive charging, and as well as things that are specific to us, like animal care and clinical and regulatory matters. Obviously, machine learning, that phrase is used a lot. But we obviously need to interpret the signals from the brain, which is a biological neural net, and the best thing to interpret a biological neural net is a digital neural net. So this is, if there's one message I want to convey, it is that if you have expertise in creating advanced devices like watches and phones, computers, then your capabilities would be of great use in solving these important problems.
Hey, thanks for watching. Take a moment to click the like button and subscribe to the channel for more videos. Back to the presentation.
That's more than anything the message I want to convey. Let's see. Yeah. Well, we're putting the team on, and we'll do some Q&A. So. If anybody has questions in the audience,
Thank you. This is obviously amazing and has clear therapeutic potential. It would also be great for the scientific neuroscience community to access some of these tools. Do you have any plans to make these available to neuroscientists?
Yes, we do. It's a great question. I think there's probably a lot that can be figured out if we provide the surgical robot and devices to neuroscience research departments at universities and hospitals. So I think at the point at which we need to be in production with the machines and obviously have the FDA approvals, but I think it would make a lot of sense to provide this to research universities and hospitals. So the question is, of the data that we...
Of the data sets that you've collected, are there any that you plan to open source for the scientific community?
Yeah, I think that would be fine. I think, yeah, sure, absolutely.
Because I think it could be really interesting for people working in AI research to build upon that and build foundation models for the brain.
Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah, I actually got no problem with just publishing it on our website. You can use it if you want.
Yeah, looking forward.
Great.
Do you think it will be helpful to actually load some drug on the surface of your electrode or some other way?
Well, I think like maybe the question is like what sort of signal degradation have we seen over time, basically just does it work a year later? Does it work 2 years later? It does. So we're also continuing to reduce the size of the electrode. So when the electrode gets really small, there's the sort of inflammation response or scar tissue becomes minuscule. So it's like a very tiny electrode the body basically ignores.
This is really impressive. Congrats to the whole team. So as you of course know, one of the problems with current electrodes is they're rigid and they move around, so you have these neural nonstationarities. And I think many of us had hoped that with these very thin threads, they would maybe move more with the brain and you wouldn't see that. But from the data you showed over many hundreds of days, there was a lot of variability. So can you speak to how much do they move, and do you have any idea of like why does it move? Can you stop it from moving? Basically, how stable are the signals hour to hour and day to day?
Yeah, to be clear, that this electrode position is actually fairly stable because you've got these basically very tiny wires with there's some play like you've got the device attached to the skull rigidly, but then you've got this long sort of tiny wire with kind of a coiled section. So it does tend to basically stay in the same place. Yep.
We also asked for questions on Neuralink's Twitter, so we'll be interleaving some of those. Supe wants to ask, what could Neuralink help people with that most people don't realize?
Well, I mean, so once you're in there, there's a lot you could do. You can obviously measure temperature, so you could do very early detection of a fever. You can measure pressure. I think you probably detect that the very beginnings of a stroke, because you can see sort of like electrical signals starting to go sort of haywire. So there's actually probably a lot of just general health monitoring that you could do once you're in there, you know, and with very simple sensors.
Hi. You guys all did a great job of distilling a lot of complex engineering and science and making it wonderfully clear. So, great job. I wanted to ask a little bit about the stimulation, I guess, for the phosphenes and for the evoked movement. How are you thinking? Is this more like local stimulation? Is it juxtacellular? Are you steering current around? How many cells are you activating? How much current are you using? I'm just curious what the scale of this is and whether you have a lot of precision or a lot of, you know, you have pretty profound behavioral effects too.
There's actually also it's possible to get to a much higher effective pixel count by controlling the electric field between the electrodes. So it's not a one-to-one relationship. You could actually dynamically adjust the field and simulate have a very high neuron to electrode ratio. So try to could you get maybe 10 to 1, 100 to 1 potentially. So a megapixel type. I mean, basically, can you see normally? But I think people would want to know that. And I think that is one of the possible outcomes.
Cool. So we have another question from Twitter. This is from David, and he asked the team, "What are the biggest lessons you learned since the previous presentation?" It's been about 2 years. I'm sure there was a lot of engineering done. So yeah, anyone want to answer what we learned in the last 2 years?
I mean, I've learned that the brain is really squishy, like way squishier than you think. It's not like cauliflower or broccoli or something like that. It's more like a water balloon, and then it's moving in your skull like a lot. So you got a squishy water balloon in a coconut. Is maybe a good way to think of it.
We have another question from Twitter. Juan wants to know, what career path do you suggest for somebody that is just getting out of high school if they want to work at Neuralink in the future?
Well, it's really any of the skills that we described. So I mean, we're developing new chips. There's material science. There's software, obviously. Animal care. I mean, it's really all the things that we listed in the Neuralink /careers. That'd be a good guide.
So I have another question, which is more about the electrical side. So you talked about 1024 channels being recording. Are you transmitting the raw signal, or was it only the 3 spike events that you were talking about, the low, mid, and the high? Or is it the entire raw waveform that you transmit?
Maybe one thing that isn't obvious is that the actual bit rate that you need to control a phone or a computer is actually very, very low. So I think we might have the record for bit rate. Is that correct? We think we do, maybe. So on the order of 10 bits per second. So that's super slow. But if you think when you're inputting data into a phone, like how fast are your thumbs moving? What's your thumb taps per second? Pretty low. And I mean, we're basically our thumbs are like 2 slow-moving meat sticks that we, do this, and it's really low. It's like a low bar, is what I'm saying. So at least for output, you get 10 bits per second. You're hauling ass. And that's, you don't need Bluetooth anything for you. So you could practically send it out with beeps and bops, So it's not. If you're going like high bandwidth visual, now you're maybe going to megabit plus, but it's still really well within Bluetooth. But anyway, it's just that is what I'm saying is that's not a constraint, the data rate. One of the sort of maybe notable item which we talked about in the presentation, but we think we can probably solve for doing the implant without cutting the dura. We can just do basically a bunch of holes through the dura, which is like the dura is like the big, thick, orange, rindy thing that contains that's up against the skull. If you don't pierce the dura, if you don't cut the dura away, and instead you have a bunch of tiny holes and insert the electrodes through the tiny holes into the brain, then the recovery time is ridiculously fast. You're not really losing much in the way of cerebrospinal fluid. You could, in theory, this could be like the whole thing could be a 10-minute operation, like LASIK. Like, it's fast. It's not like a big laborious thing. It's super fast. But I think if you ask a question like in my opinion, like would I be comfortable implanting this in someone, one of my kids or something like that, if at this point, like if they're in a serious, like let's say if they broke their neck, would I feel comfortable right now doing it? I would. I would say we're at the point where, at least in my opinion, it would not be dangerous.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. So I have a non-technical question. Are you collaborating with people with motor disabilities? And if so, have they shared any ideas of applications that they would be excited about?
Something that's we've talked about, but is maybe should be reemphasized. We are doing we're building up a production system for the devices. So we're bringing out the production line, making large numbers of devices. We want to make thousands, ultimately tens of thousands, then millions of devices. So the progress at first, particularly as it applies to humans, will seem perhaps agonizingly slow, but we're doing all of the things necessary to bring it to scale in parallel. So in theory, progress should be exponential.
Okay, so thank you. That was a very cool presentation. So one of the stated goals was recording from everywhere in the brain, being able to record from and perturb any location. So it seems like currently it's all cortical. And I'm curious, with the current device, is there any sort of long-term goal or idea as to extending it into going deeper in the brain? I mean, for neuropsychiatric disorders, for memory, all of these things are much deeper, several centimeters. So I'm wondering, what's the time scale, if you were to give a very rough estimate, of when I can expect to see a Neuralink product that goes that deep?
Yeah, so, I mean, the fundamentals of the device in the skull will stay essentially the same, because as I said earlier, the device in the skull is very much like a smartwatch. Essentially, it's a battery, radio, inductive charger, computer, and then you've got the little wires. And so you need to make the wires longer, and you'd have to have a deeper insertion needle for the robot, but this really is intended to be a generalized I/O device. So apart from the tiny wires being longer and the surgical robot needing a longer needle, in theory, you should be able to go anywhere.
Because it seems to me that part of the robot is trying to detect where the blood vessels are and then avoid them, correct? Would that be possible at that scale? I mean, certainly not just visually, but maybe there's some other way of detecting it. Is that a current goal, and do you expect that within, I suppose, the next decade?
Yeah, I think that's really the ideal situation. If the threads are really tiny, they can actually go through a blood vessel, and it's okay if they're tiny enough. So we wouldn't need the blood vessel imaging in that case. I actually am slightly optimistic that is achievable. I guess people don't realize, like, for the deep brain simulation, just how big the hole is. What is it like? I mean, how basically, in current deep brain simulation, how much of a borehole is drilled in the brain?
Yeah, you're drilling a 14 millimeter burr hole, and then passing a 2 millimeter wire, 6 centimeters, 8 centimeters deep into the brain. So all blindly, hoping that you don't hit a blood vessel, telling the patient up front, this might be good for you, and there's a 1% chance your brain is going to bleed in a way we can't control. So
That is current technology that is happening right now. So doing better than that is we can definitely do way better than that. No problem.
Our needle's 40 microns in diameter.
Yeah, exactly. Right, maybe just one or two more questions.
Yeah, I have a question about your very, very long-term inspiration to have this high bandwidth communication with advanced AIs. So it seems like the advanced AI would need to understand the human's most complex thoughts and emotions, and that's what neuroscientists are trying to do. So do you have any ambitions to tackle neuroscience beyond neuroengineering?
Well, I mean, I think we're going to make the input-output device and the software interface with it, and I think probably, per the suggestion earlier, we'll try to open source as much as possible so people can take a look at it, and I think there will be a lot of others that build upon the work that we're doing. The same way that if you make a microprocessor or CPU or computer, that people will write lots of software that runs on that computer. But if you don't have the computer, the software is moot. So we're making the input-output device with the computer, and then I think probably there'll probably be a lot of other organizations, companies that build upon that foundation. So, yeah. I mean, one of the things that's I would sometimes wonder is that if you do have a whole brain interface and you can record memories, you're really getting into Black Mirror stuff here, but this could be one of them.
The presentation covered keyboard and handwriting-based input methods. How do you plan to develop an input model that will achieve much higher bandwidths for complex tasks in humans?
Yeah, I think just having this general input-output device will just so gigantically improve our understanding of the brain. It's hard to, the words can barely express. Like, right now we're just guessing a lot of what's going on in the brain, but if you have direct I/O, it's no more guessing. What we will learn about the brain with such a device in wide use is absolutely many orders of magnitude more than we currently understand. So I guess on that note, thank you for coming and thank you for watching online.
Thanks so much for watching the video. Make sure to like and subscribe to stay updated with my latest videos. You're going to want to see my next video about my reactions and general review of Neuralink's Show and Tell Day. There is a lot to unpack. Also consider joining our Patreon in the description to help support the channel, where you'll get early access to all of our videos. Thanks for watching Forward Tech with Akhan. Until next time.